The analogy of a bad apple has been around for a long time. The comparison, being prone to the behaviors of people, often sets the stage for an awful play that ends up being sold to its audience as truth. We capture in our minds the specifics within theories, those that agree with our worldview, and because of this, we remain stagnant. Determining what presses us on to embrace that which otherwise would be ignored is an important part of rising up above our own past, and is principal if we are to solve that which lie before us. In 1936, Max and Emma Hahn went out on a hike at Red Creek near London in Texas. Before heading home, they spotted what they thought was just an interesting rock, due to a small segment of petrified wood jutting out, and they decided to take it back with them. No one would know the importance of their find until 11 years had gone by. Their son's curiosity got the best of him, and he decided to break it open. Measuring 6 inches in length and 1 inch thick, the artifact stayed with the Hahns until 1983, when it was purchased by a creationist named Carl Bau. Bau believed the limestone, which the hammer was encased in, came from a nearby rock layer which was dated to 300 million years. All the information we have to date has been given by Bau himself, from the consistency of the hammerhead to the black substance on the edge of the handle, which he believes to be coal. By 1996, David Lines, a friend of Bau's, said the handle had finally been carbon dated. The test results showed that its oldest possible date was no more than 700 years. So how can a 700-year-old hammer be encased in rock that has been dated to the Permian? In a nutshell, water erosion. Some rocks are porous, and just a small amount of acid and water can seep through and release the minerals within, carrying them out with the flow. Whatever object happens to be in the path of the newly mineralized water will have these minerals collecting around it. Carbonate rocks make up about 10 to 15% of sedimentary rocks. The majority of them consist of limestones and dolostones. And since limestone is soluble, it has the ability to encrust itself around objects. Since the tip of the handle was exposed before the rock was broken, it would have been vulnerable to black mold. Anyone with a log cabin or wood furniture can attest to what happens when wood is exposed to moisture. Another likely candidate could be iron ore deposits. Iron oxide will leach from sedimentary rock. Archaeologists have been attempting to find the best methods of removing iron oxide from artifacts because of their exposure to water. A group came together to solve the issue, and in order to do this, they used a sample of balsa, which was purposefully saturated. The sample itself shows that the process doesn't take a long time to show the results of discoloration. Since the tip of the handle was exposed for longer than the rest of the artifact, could what we see be no more than staining? The London hammer is recognized by most who see it, and with all the questions surrounding this object, we'll never know who's right or wrong. But with all due respect, the Hahns weren't wrong in assuming that this was one interesting rock. The artifact is now on display in Carl Bau's Creation Evidence Museum in Texas. The first information we have about the Klerksdorp spheres came out in 1937, before the opening of a pyrophyllite mine in Ottosdal, South Africa. The Wonderstone Company had a geological survey taken. In the account of this survey, the spheres were briefly mentioned to assess their cost due to waste management. It was believed at the time the spheres were too scattered to be of any significant cost to the company. It would later be found that the spheres were concentrated to a seam within the mine. Through that time, all kinds of theories were proposed, including that they were man-made. Since the material being mined where the spheres were found has been dated to 3 billion years, attention to them grew quickly. Ranging in size from 1 to 10 centimeters, by 2007 the more interesting specimens were cut open and analyzed. It was determined to be a concretion of sedimentary rock. Not all concretions are created by the breakdown of sedimentary rock by water. Different environmental effects can have these porous types of rock erode and create similar types of forms, although they have to be created under unique chemical reactions. These types of concretions are found in other areas of the planet, such as the Moki marbles of Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and Panama. Some have even been spotted on Mars, which have been dubbed the Martian blueberries. Although the Klerksdorp spheres have been given Mother Nature's stamp of approval, it doesn't mean that every stone sphere we come across isn't man-made or reused by man. There have been many of these which have come up that were shaped by people. The dolerite stones in Egypt are another example among many others. So if you ever happen to find one of these, whether it's a billion-year-old natural creation or a million-year-old human one, you have something worth keeping. On February 13th, 1961, 3 friends who had started up a rock and gem shop were out on the hunt for geodes at Owens Lake in California. The following day, while cutting the geodes to prepare them for display, one nearly destroyed a new blade saw. Once cut, it was discovered that it wasn't a geode at all. Inside was a circular disc of porcelain with a 2 mm metal center, and when tested, the metal center reacted to a magnet. It also had shell fragments throughout. The rockhounds debated amongst themselves as to what they had come across. One suggested the oddity could be a nail and a washer that were encased in hardened clay, but being unsure of exactly what they had found, they allowed it to be tested. An X-ray of the 2 halves was taken, and as speculation of exactly what it was passed around media and research groups, Chad Windham, the president of a group of spark plug enthusiasts and collectors, recognized exactly what it was: a 1920s champion spark plug. The area the Caso artifact was found in was once a popular place. The lake bed nearby where the artifact was found had quite a controversial history surrounding it. Not only did it pull visitors who wished to enjoy the lake in its heyday, but in 1913, protests erupted to protect the lake as the rivers that filled it were to be diverted to Los Angeles. Between 1913 and 1926, Lake Owens would have had a lot of visitors, and during those years the Champion spark plug was the brand that was used by the Ford Motor Company. And within that time, Ford had produced the Model R and Model T Speedster, among others. The protests to keep the lake failed, and by 1926, it had been completely dried out. The odds of a spark plug ending up in the lake or one of the rivers before its draining is highly likely. It would have had plenty of time, while the metal parts rusted, to be covered with freshwater shells, minerals, and muck before the water lowered and left the spark plug to harden in the sun. With the permission of the family of one of the discoverers, the University of Washington tested it, and in 2018 they found out that the initial verdict on the artifact was accurate. The Caso artifact is now on display at the Pacific Science Center in Seattle, Washington. The next item is enshrouded in questions. Uncannily resembling a 3-prong plug, the only information we have to go on is what was given by John Williams, who found it. No one but Williams knows of the location where the object was found, and he states his reasons for not announcing it due to a previous discovery in which he had witnessed an artifact destroyed due to mismanagement and politics. He has also stated that he does not want the area to be plundered of any potential artifacts. The information given is that it was looked at by a geologist who agreed the item was not glued or forced into the rock in any way. He claimed the only way for it to be there is to have been present when the rock formed. Other than an X-ray and a few photographs, we have nothing else to go on. John does have it available to be tested under certain conditions. He is to be present during the examination. Someone else is to pay for the test, and he is allowed to, at any time, cancel the evaluation without penalty. William's Enigmalith is for sale on his website for the cool price of $500,000. But until someone can buy it outright or takes him up on his offer to test it, we will remain in the dark about what this object can tell us. Another artifact which no one has been able to get a hold of is a Lanzhou stone. A geologist named Zilin Wang found the stone in 2002 during a research trip to the Mazang Mountain in northern Gansu, China. All of the information, including the one image available, is from what was reported on June 26 in the Lanzhou Morning News in 2002. According to the rest of the article, it weighs 466 grams. Its dimensions are 6 by 8 centimeters. It was covered around rock that was dated to 300 million years. The rock type in which the object is surrounded by was not recognized, and the item encased inside is threaded metal. Speculations have ranged from a screw, a World War II bullet, to a specific cephalopod. Until the research that was done on this find is released, all we have to go on is the article and image provided. But until then, nothing can be proven nor discounted. Nature sure has a way of fooling us, and because of the nature of humanity, we are often easily fooled. What we know about how quickly rock can form on land has changed. And with that said, the ocean also has a tendency to bring up things to the surface that also throw us off from time to time. These are crinoids. They're fossilized marine animals, and they have certain body parts that look like screws. So when a fossil found in the Kaluga region of Russia, in rock that was dated to 300 million years, it's not hard to imagine that a marine animal wasn't the first thing on the discoverer's mind. When you see the similarities between the two, you can easily forgive anyone for making this mistake. There's a variety of marine life which echo this pattern, from crinoids, Archimedes fossils, to rock-encased turritiline gastropod shells. Since a great deal of our oceans remain unexplored, it will be interesting to see what else we may end up finding in the future, and how much havoc it will wreak on the minds of those who take it upon themselves to find out what it is. Another marine artifact discovered which was thought to be something else entirely is the Morozov microchip. It was found by a Russian fisherman who donated to a local university. It was looked at for a while before the end finding from the Bratislava University in Slovakia. Their Faculty of Natural Sciences determined in 2014 that it was the skin pattern from the root of a sea lily. Our oceans have been rising, falling, and shifting for at least 3.8 billion years. What you see as land while you're out rock collecting may have been underwater, a lot of water. In fact, the likelihood that where you're at right now was covered by an ocean, sea, lake, or river is not only highly probable, but it would be extremely rare if it wasn't. Because of this, these guys have a bad habit of popping up, along with their friends, almost everywhere. In 1974, construction workers in contract along the banks of the Mureș River near Aiud, Romania, found 3 items buried a little over 9 meters under sand. 2 were mastodon bones, dating to at least 11,000 years. The other was a strangely shaped aluminum object with a thick oxide layer. They sent the entirety of the find to the Archaeological Institute in Cluj-Napoca, in the region of Transylvania. Once there, it was passed to a Dr. Niederkorn from the Institute for the Study of Metals in Magarel. The age was estimated to be no more than 300 to 400 years, and not the 11,000 that were given to the bones beside it. What has become known as the Wedge of Aiud is not without question. Since we know no one was producing aluminum in the U.S. between the years given for this artifact, we have to ascertain that there is either something wrong with the dating of the oxide layer, or something that happened while the layer was forming. A short time after being in the hands of Dr. Niederkorn, it was turned over to the laboratory in Lausanne, Switzerland, who confirmed the same age, as well as the complexity of its makeup, and it was this complexity which teetered towards solving this puzzle. One theory that has been gaining ground surrounds how uncannily close this mixture is to a discovery that was created for military use during World War I. It came from a German metallurgist named Alfred Wilm, and it was patented in 1909. His creation, called duralumin, was used for the fuselages of military planes during World War I. It was also put to use for World War II, and is still being used today in the aeronautics industry. He discovered that when adding copper to the aluminum mix, it not only strengthened the alloy, but allowed it to produce aluminum oxide at room temperature, protecting it further. This would significantly decrease the time it would take for aluminum oxide to form. Although the wedge's composition is not an exact replica of Wilm's, it is very close, and not impossible that this may be a prior piece made with an earlier mixture. Another theory is that it could be a tooth from an excavator bucket during mining operations in the area. This is a good candidate, but there are still questions that remain unanswered with this proposal. The teeth that we use today have barely changed since their creation with the Otis steam shovel in 1835. They also use a low alloy steel with nickel, which is not present in the makeup of the wedge. It's difficult to say what was found under the sand in Romania, whether it's as simple as a piece of equipment from mining machinery, or a part from a top-secret aircraft that was lost on a test voyage. We can be sure that although this isn't an ancient artifact, the Wedge of Aiud has definitely earned itself a place as a mystery from our recent past. The last reported location of the wedge is at the Museum of History in Transylvania. In 1996, author Bayou was writing a book on a region within his country. He decided to explore one particular area on account of hearing about its unique geological structures. These structures in which the author was interested in witnessing were the bygone pipes in Qaidam, China. Yu took samples on his visit, which were sent to the Department of Metallurgy. They determined that 92% of the contents were comprised of common metals, but 8% were unidentifiable, and they also believed the pipes were smeltered. After Bayou's book was released, the Chinese government decided to send Professor Xin Zhaidong of the Institute of Geology to see if these pipes could be explained. Although they appear to be no more than rusted pipes, interest in them becomes more evident when considering that thermoluminescence dated them to a whopping 450,000 years. Since it is believed that human activity in the region has only been around for 30,000, focus from most on-ground investigators have been towards a natural origin. The first proposition from scientists was that metals leaching from the rock were responsible. but they could not explain the amount of metals within the cavities. Some had proposed huge floods which brought in iron oxide, but they were perplexed on how the spaces which would allow for this collection to take place were created. For a time, scientists from all around the world took it upon themselves to try and decipher the mystery of the bygone pipes. It wasn't until someone picked up on a study that was done in Louisiana. The study involves something called pedogenesis. This is the process of plants when they turn into soil. The geologists in the study came across petrified tree trunks whose innards were filled with ground, and these tree casts gave rise to the final theory. This theory put forward was that what happened in Louisiana happened in Kaidam, and afterwards, floods carrying iron oxide and other elements filled the cavities. However, there are questions surrounding this proposition. Trees that are attracted to sandy soils certainly did grow in the region of Kaidam, but those tested in Louisiana were those that grew in forests with rich soil. Were Louisiana and Kaidam as different in the past as they are today? Could the same process achieve the same results in different environments? With the rising and falling of oceans, the migration of rivers, the movements of the poles, and the constant changing of climate because of it, it is possible that this effect was caused under the exact same conditions. We have also learned through concretion that different chemical reactions can reach similar results. Does this mean that the bygone pipes have been explained? Actually, it doesn't. They may be tree casts, but the theories proposed around their creation aren't solid. In order to find out exactly what has happened here, and to ensure that the claims around the pipes are accurate, more work has to be done. The Institute of Geology in China finally determined that potassium, aluminum, sodium, and a few others came up as being present in the 8% of missing material. What's been throwing many for a loop is an extra piece of information. The Chinese Earthquake Administration ran some tests and found that some of these pipes are highly radioactive, and no one can explain why. No matter what your take is on these pipes, whether they turn out to be of a natural phenomena or not, in truth, we are nowhere near understanding exactly what has happened here than we were when we started. Holding on to theories surrounding artifacts because they benefit our worldview only tarnish the items out there that may stand a chance of answering questions about our ancient past. The more things we have out of our way, the more time we can spend on those that may have actual connections to the times, places, and events which remain unanswered. It's not to say that there's nothing out there which may hold connections to ancient advanced societies. In fact, there are plenty of relics that have been sitting around waiting for the entirety of the scientific community to descend upon, but so far have just a few fighting for that to happen. Assuming that the only proof of advanced civilization should be in the form of a plastic or metal is where many of us fall the wayside. Another thing we need to come to grasp with is that the science of today should be viewed not as whole truth, but as what we believe we know to be the most accurate with the technology that we have at our disposal. Perhaps through criticizing every aspect of our own theories, we can arrive closer to understanding that which we seek, because holding on to that which can be easily explained as proof of our desires, we become no different than what is recognized as a bad apple.